This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Upgrade your business with Shopify, home of the #1 checkout on the planet. Shop Pay boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning fewer carts going abandoned and more sales going cha-ching. So if you're into growing your business, get a commerce platform that's ready to sell wherever your customers are. Visit shopify.com to upgrade your selling today.
It took a lifetime to find the person you want to marry. Finding the perfect engagement ring is a lot easier. At BlueNile.com, you can find or design the ring you've always dreamed of with help from Blue Nile's jewelry experts who are on hand 24/7 to answer questions, and the ease and convenience of shopping online. For a limited time, get $50 off your purchase of $500 or more with code LISTEN at BlueNile.com. That's $50 off with code LISTEN at BlueNile.com.
This is the FPL Draft Zone, your fantasy team's best signing of the season.
Owners of Omar Marmoush celebrate a first ever hat-trick for the Egyptian. Chelsea have now won only 2 of their last 9 games, so is it time to bin off all of their assets for good? And Mikel Merino is the Spanish Erling Haaland as he keeps Arsenal in the race for the title. Hello and welcome to the FPL Draft Zone, a podcast all about Draft FPL. I am Dom Crofts. I hope you are well, and I hope you had a successful weekend in your draft leagues where 26 goals were scored across 10 fixtures, and the likes of Brighton, Manchester City and Bournemouth registered very convincing wins. Coming up on today's show, we're going to be discussing all that and more. We're going to be talking about some of the key performers from Gameweek 25, and we're going to be throwing forward to Gameweek 26, where we'll be flagging a few waiver options for your team and trying to unearth a few under-the-radar picks as well. And of course, we are giving you all that for free. There is no Patreon here, my friends. The only payment we require from you is a nice little review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on, whether it's a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or some lovely words on Spotify. That is all we ask of you. So if you can deliver that for us, it would be massively appreciated. Right, let's take a whistle-stop look back at what has happened so far in Game Week 25 with one match left to play, and it all started on Friday night, where it was a Valentines Day Massacre for Chelsea as they were battered 3-0 by Brighton at the Amex. Yankuba Minte scored twice. We recommended him last week. Karu Matoma scored a sensational goal. Bart Verbruggen walked away with an assist and a 10-point haul. And Chelsea, well, they created just 0.65 XG across the 90 minutes, with Nico Jackson replacement Christopher Nkunku failing to perform for the Blues. Brighton, well, they're having an up and down season in terms of results, but they are now just 6 points from 5th placed Bournemouth. Wow. On Saturday lunchtime, Arsenal lined up with Raheem Sterling on the left of their front line for the visit to Leicester. Owners of Leo Trossard will have been very excited to see him start in that central striker position, but Sterling stunk the place out so bad that Mikel Arteta had to turn to Mikel Merino after an hour in this one, and Merino produced 2 sublime finishes to give the Gunners the 3 points. If he is free on your waivers, he is going to be hugely popular this week, and for good reason, because he is surely going to start up front for Arsenal for the rest of the season now. And then in the 3 p.m. GMT games, Aston Villa failed to beat 10-men Ipswich at home, with Liam Delap putting the visitors in front before Ollie Watkins rescued a point for Unai Emery's side. Marcus Rashford bagged maximum bonus points in this one, despite only coming on for the second half. Fulham, they beat high-flying Nottingham Forest at Craven Cottage. Another recommendation last week, Emile Smith-Rowe was on target for the home side, and it was Calvin Bassey who got the winner for Marco Silva's side after Chris Wood had equalised for Forest from a Morgan Gibbs white assist. Manchester City bounced back from their midweek humbling at the hands of Real Madrid by annihilating Newcastle United 4-0 at the Etihad. Omar Marmoush got a hat-trick. Jamie McAtee scored as well, and there were assists for Ederson, Erling Haaland, Savinho and Gundogan. Southampton lost the South Coast derby to Bournemouth with the usual suspects Justin Kluivert, Dango Utara and Antoine Semenyo returning for the visitors. Tavernier was a scorer as well for the Cherries. And Brentford, well, they cruised past a very disappointing West Ham United side at the London Stadium. It finished 1-0. It could and should have been far more convincing. Kevin Schade got the only goal of the game. Evan Ferguson was the one bright spot for the home side after he came on in the second half and looked like their best hope of launching a comeback. Everton's good form and their exceptional record over Crystal Palace continued with another win at Selhurst Park. Beto put them in front with his fourth goal in his last 3 games for the Toffees. Mateta equalised for the hosts, and then Carlos Alcaraz won it for Everton. Alcaraz got an assist as well and maximum bonus in his first start for the club. And then on Sunday, Liverpool won again 2-1 at home to Wolves in what was one of their least convincing performances of the season. Salah returned again. It is what he does. Cunha returned for Wolves as well. The visitors had 10 shots on Liverpool's goal in the second half of this one, and Liverpool did not register a single shot on Wolves' goal in that second 45. Arne Slot's team finished their double game week with a trip to Aston Villa on Wednesday night. And then in the final game of the weekend, darts fanatic James Maddison gave Spurs a second league win in a row. They beat Manchester United 1-0 in North London. Jed Spence was in the bonus points again for the home side, as was Vicario, who returned to the Spurs 11 after recovering from a long-term injury. There is still one more game left to play in Game Week 25, and that is the match between Aston Villa and Liverpool on Wednesday, the 19th of February. But hopefully whatever happens in that one is completely irrelevant to you and your draft team, because you have already cruised to victory in your head-to-head league or hauled a boatload of points in your classic league. Right, enough of that. Let's talk winners and let's talk losers.
The FPL Draft Zone. Winners and losers.
And first up are the winners, and first up is Yankuba Minte, who was excellent in Brighton's win over Chelsea. He scored twice. He finished the game week with a huge 15-point haul, and it is his second big return in the space of just 4 game weeks after he walked away with 12 points back in game week 22 against Manchester United. He now has 8 returns for the season, and while he is still a gamble for draft managers, having started just 4 of Brighton's last 10 games, 3 of those starts have come in his last 4 games. So the signs are that Fabian Hertzler is just beginning to trust the former Newcastle player on a more regular basis. Mikel Merino is another winner this week. There was talk he might fill in for Kai Havertz prior to the weekend, but in the end, Mikel Arteta opted to play Trossard through the middle and Raheem Sterling on the wing, but Raheem Sterling did a passable impression of someone who has never played football before, never even seen a football before, saw the football for the first time on Saturday, thought it was a dangerous weapon and did all he could to avoid it at all costs. I would be amazed if he started Arsenal's next game against West Ham. So if you rolled the dice on Merino this week, you have probably got yourself a starting centre-forward in the team currently second in the Premier League. And if he isn't taken in your league right now, it goes without saying that you should prioritise him on the waivers this week. And Carlos Alcaraz and Ryan Christie also deserve shout-outs this week after they both returned 13 points for their owners. Alcaraz is back in England, having previously had a spell at Southampton, but based on his performance in his first start for Everton, his future in the Premier League suddenly looks very bright indeed. And Ryan Christie, well, he's one of Bournemouth's unsung heroes this season. He's not had the sort of returns that some of his teammates have enjoyed, but a goal and an assist against Southampton would have been a welcome bonus for any managers who took a gamble on him with Bournemouth's kind run of fixtures in mind. As for the losers, Chelsea assets are not exactly setting the world alight right now. They're on a bad run of form. They've lost their first choice striker, and defensively, even upcoming fixtures against Southampton and Leicester are not looking straightforward anymore for a team who have conceded at least 1 goal in each of their last 8 games. Aston Villa's second season under Unai Emery is threatening to unravel in the Premier League at least, as they failed to beat Ipswich at home. It's now just 2 wins in their last 8 ahead of that meeting with league leaders Liverpool on Wednesday. And West Ham also underwhelmed this week, despite having a bit of a treasure trove of attacking talent in their squad. A 1-0 defeat to Brentford means that Graham Potter has won just once since taking over in his first 5 games for the Hammers. So that is the good, that is the bad, but who is the best? Who is the very best? Who is our hero of the week?
Hero of the Week.
And this week's Hero of the Week is, of course, Manchester City hat-trick hero Omar Marmoush, who put Newcastle to the sword at the Etihad as Manchester City pitched in what was probably their best performance of the season so far. Marmoush got 25 returns in 17 games for Frankfurt in the Bundesliga before he joined City. He also got 6 returns in 6 in the Europa League and 3 returns in 3 in the DFB Pokal as well. And now he has 3 returns in 3 games for his new club. So that makes it 37 returns this season in 29 games. The Egyptian would have been snapped up by whoever is bottom of your draft league the week after he was added to the game, and he may well single-handedly turn their fortunes around and cost you the odd point as well if he continues this sort of form. City desperately needed a good news story after a rubbish season so far, but maybe, just maybe, Marmoush is the man to lift their spirits and lift his new team up the table. The win over Newcastle means that Pep's sides are now up to 4th in the league. They are a win off third place Nottingham Forest. They have a superior goal difference. And after next weekend's game against Liverpool, they have a relatively kind run-in until the end of the season. Marmoush will be a key player for them going forwards. He could be the man to lift your side up the table if you've managed to bring him into your draft team. Mo Salah is no longer the only Egyptian making waves in the top flight. Oh my lord, there's a new striker in town, and his name is Marmoush. Omar, we salute you. You are our fantasy hero of the week.
Hero of the Week.
Right, Game Week 25 is almost over, and Game Week 26 is right around the corner. So let's not mess about. Let's take a look at those fixtures that will decide your fantasy football fate next weekend, and let's see if we can't find you a few under-the-radar draft picks to help take your side to the next level. It is time for a bit of this.
The FPL Draft Zone. Waiver Wants.
As usual, we're going to take a look at the game week fixture by fixture and make a few waiver suggestions for those all-important waivers. And that means that this week we are starting with, yes, it's true, another Friday night game. Last week it was Brighton against Chelsea. This week it is Leicester at home to Brentford. Leicester desperately need a win to keep them in with a shout of surviving the drop. Brentford are mired in mid-table. They won't go down. They won't qualify for Europe. They may well be thinking about a little holiday on the beach in a few weeks' time. Earlier in the season, Brentford won 4-1 at the G-Tech, with Kevin Schade scoring a hat-trick. Meanwhile, the 2 previous meetings both ended in draws. And as much as Leicester do need the points on Friday, it feels a little bit like they're catching Brentford at the wrong time, because for so long Thomas Frank's side have struggled away from home, but they are now on a run of 3 away wins on the spin. They won 5-0 at Southampton, they won 2-1 at Crystal Palace, and then they beat West Ham 1-0 at the London Stadium this weekend. In terms of potential waiver picks, Schade is the obvious option if he's still available. He's having his most prolific season in England so far. He's got 7 goals and 4 assists. He has started the last 3 games, but he is likely to be free in quite a lot of leagues because he has not been guaranteed starting berths despite those returns. And against a slow backline that have just lost James Justin to injury, one of the few players who has got pace in that backline, he could really reap his rewards again in this one and add to the treble he got against the Foxes earlier in the season. Nathan Collins and Keane Lewis-Potter would also be worth considering if you're short of a defender or a midfielder. Always target the bad teams, and let's face it, Leicester, I'm afraid, are a bad team. And from a defensive perspective, any route into that Brentford backline is not a bad idea, because Leicester have failed to score in 4 of their last 5 games now, and the only team they did get a goal against in that time was Spurs, who were missing most of their first team and playing what appeared to be just supporters they'd pulled off the stands. El Canouse represents the most fun pick if you're in for a bit of Leicester action. He's good to watch, he's very skillful, he's entirely capable of popping up with something genius-like, or maybe, to a lesser genius degree on the genius scale, maybe Jordan Ayew could do something for the Foxes. He is their second highest goal scorer this season with 4 goals. Yes, you heard me right. Second highest goal scorer with 4 goals. On Saturday, it is Everton against Manchester United as David Moyes takes on one of his former teams. And given the respective form of the two sides, you've got to fancy Everton in this one, although history is on United's side. They have won the last 6 meetings in a row against Everton. They have scored 16 goals and conceded just 2 in that time. They also won 4-0 at Old Trafford earlier this season. But, this is a different Everton side to the one Sean Dyche was in charge of back then. David Moyes has had the sort of impact with the Toffees that I'm sure United fans were hoping Ruben Amorim was going to have with them. But the Portuguese has now lost 8 of his 14 league games in charge, including 3 of his last 4, and he has just 4 wins in the top flight so far. Beto is probably unavailable now, given his recent form, but if he is still somehow floating about on your waivers, you need to make him a striking priority. He's waited a long time for his chance in that Everton starting 11, but he's really taking that chance now that it has come along. Carlos Alcaraz was excellent in Everton's win at Palace, and you would expect him to retain his place for this one, with Ndiaye likely to be absent again. And against this United team, he is more than capable of registering another return. Decore is back from suspension if you think he can get himself another goal. We mentioned a few weeks ago that he does tend to be a streaky player. When he scores one, he tends to follow that up with another in a very short space of time, and you can absolutely see someone like him bullying this United team. And given the lack of attacking quality available to Amorim, an Everton defender would also be in my thinking this week. Tarkowski and Branthwaite would be the top 2 picks, with O'Brien and Mikalenko other options. As for United, they've lost Amad Diallo for what looks like the rest of the season, so if you want to root into their team, the likes of Xerxes and Garnacho will likely get more minutes going forward now. Whether they can make an impact or not is another matter entirely. And there is an outside chance that Chido Obi Martin might get some more minutes in this one. He is a striker who United signed from Arsenal, where he was insanely prolific at youth level. He's carried that form into United's youth team as well. He got a few minutes off the bench against Spurs, and given United have nothing to play for between now and the end of the season, you might as well rename them Dead Rubber FC. He may well be given more game time with a view to next season. He would be a big gamble, but if your current third striker is absolute bobbins and he's offering you next to nothing, it might be worth the risk, because United do need a striker right now. Xerxes and Højlund are not doing the business, so maybe Amorim will just roll the dice on Obi Martin.
This episode is brought to you by MeUndies. Underwear drawers are like the Wild West. You never know what you're going to pull out or what shape it's in. So upgrade your collection with the buttery soft comfort of MeUndies. MeUndies' signature fabric is as soft as a warm hug from your favorite sweater. Plus, it's breathable and oh so comfy, making it ideal for all-day wear. Get 20% off your first order, plus free shipping at MeUndies.com/Spotify with code SPOTIFY. That's MeUndies.com/Spotify, code SPOTIFY.
It's Arsenal against West Ham at the Emirates, and of course Mikel Merino is the big player we should all be looking at this week on the waivers. He will be Arsenal's starting forward for the rest of the season if fit. He is not going to be very widely owned across draft, and he is playing a West Ham team that have really underwhelmed so far under Graham Potter. Their performance at home to Brentford was especially bad. And even though Arsenal have all these problems in terms of injuries, they should still have enough to create a lot of chances against this Hammer side unless they improve and improve fast. We've already seen what Merino can do when he is presented with an opportunity. Ben White is also back in the Arsenal squad after a long-term layoff through injury, and he will get lots of minutes between now and the end of the season, given Arsenal's need to rest and rotate. Should anything happen to Merino, you would think that Ricardo Calafiori will be next in line for that forward role, given his physical similarities to both Havertz and the Spaniard. So if you can store a defender on your bench, he is worth considering. And Declan Rice remains a very decent option as well. He's across most set pieces. He was pushing forward a lot more in that win over Leicester, particularly in the first half, as Arsenal searched for solutions to their forward problems. And this weekend, he is up against his old club, so narrative klaxon. As for West Ham, Evan Ferguson did not start in that defeat to Brentford, but he did come on and he did make a difference. So I suspect he will start going forwards. And if you are short of a striker and he is still on your waivers, then get him in. Because even though West Ham's form is ropey, maybe he could be a difference maker. West Ham have conceded 11 goals in their last 2 games with the Gunners, but they did win the last time these two sides met at the Emirates, with Souček among the scorers. Bournemouth take on Wolves at the Vitality. Wolves were pretty good at Anfield in that second half on Sunday, but Bournemouth away is another really tough test for them. Bournemouth's main assets will already be taken by now, but I will say again that if you can get Dango Utara in a trade, that would be a great bit of business. He's not a fashionable pick, so it's not impossible an owner might be up for a deal. Outside of him, we talked earlier about Ryan Christie having a good weekend. I don't think he's a realistic option in 10-team leagues and under, but in larger leagues, I don't see why not. He's currently got 5 returns from an XGI of 4.2, so he is overperforming right now. The last 2 games have also seen his XGI skyrocket from where it was. He got 0.35 XGI against Southampton and 0.31 against Liverpool, and before that he hadn't managed more than 0.16 XGI in 7 of his previous 8 matches. So he's going in the right direction. He's not going to be prolific for you, but if you do want to root into that Bournemouth midfield, he may be the only regular starter who is available on the waivers. And a reminder that they are in the middle of a run of games where they are basically playing all the teams that have conceded the most goals this season, with Wolves, Ipswich and West Ham all coming up very soon indeed. If there is a Tavernier available, he's obviously higher up that priority list. David Brooks probably is as well, but Christie is another option for that good run. By the way, just a reminder that Bournemouth won the reverse fixture 4-2 earlier in the season, thanks to a hat-trick of penalties from Justin Kluivert, but they haven't beaten Wolves at home in any of their last 4 meetings, losing 2 and drawing 2. It's Fulham against Crystal Palace at Craven Cottage. Fulham are having a brilliant season. They beat Forest last time out. They are unbeaten in their last 6 against Crystal Palace, although 4 of them have been draws. And they are only 5 points now off Manchester City in 4th place, which is amazingly, brilliantly crazy. They may make the UEFA Champions League. And Emil Smith-Rowe is a player who has broken back into their starting 11 of late. He has started the last 5 now. He's returned twice in that time, including against Nottingham Forest. So he would be high on my wish list if he's available on the waivers. Adama Traore also started the last 2 if you do want a route into that Fulham midfield, and ESR is not available. As for Palace, where to start? I mean, they are a very different team away from home to the one that dropped points this weekend at Selhurst Park. They seem built to play away from home under Oliver Glasner. They've only won 1 of their last 8 home matches at Selhurst Park, but away from home, they are unbeaten in 8, winning 5 of those games, including their last 3. And they've also kept clean sheets in their last 4 away games. So there is evidence to suggest that they can go to Fulham and they can keep them out. If you think they can, Chris Richards is probably your most available route into that backline, but Ben Chilwell also played 30 minutes against Everton, and in that time, he ended up with an XGI of 0.30, which, it goes without saying, is quite impressive. So if you can get him in and he can break into their first team, he would be a player with a massive upside, as we discussed last week. If you didn't listen to it, go back and have a little listen. It's Ipswich against Spurs at Portman Road, as Ipswich look to do the double over a team in the Premier League for the first time. Spurs have started to get some players back, so it won't be as easy as perhaps it could have been. Vicario returned in goal and ended up in the bonus points in that win over Manchester United. He would be a strong keeper option if you do need to strengthen in that area. He made 6 saves at the weekend, and he will be busy going forward, because that's just the way we play, mate. It's just the way we play. Jed Spence is turning into a bonus points monster as well. He's picked up maximum bonus in his last 2 games now, so the chances are if Spurs do keep a clean sheet in this one, he will be there or thereabouts again in the bonus. Udogie will be a threat going forward now he is fit, but I think, to be honest, it is Spence's shirt for now. As for Ipswich, Palmer had an excellent game on his debut in goal against Aston Villa, so he represents another keeper option if you're looking for an upgrade in that area, maybe an upgrade for a second choice keeper rather than a first choice. But beyond that, slim pickings at Ipswich Town I am afraid. Southampton take on Brighton, and you would have to fancy Brighton to win this one at St Mary's. They have not lost to the Saints in their previous 6 meetings. We talked about Minte earlier, but he feels like a great pickup this week given his form and his opponents. He's the player most likely to be free on the waivers from Brighton's attacking assets, and despite conceding 7 on their last game away from the Amex, Brighton defenders might not be bad options this week either. Southampton have scored in each of their last 5 games, but they are still not very good, let's be honest. And despite the shellacking at the hands of Forest, Brighton have actually restricted their opponents to less than a goal's worth of XG in 4 of their last 6 games. In the battle of 2 teams threatening to let their season slide, it is Aston Villa against Chelsea. Villa have a lot of attacking options now following their January transfer window splurge, but I imagine most of them were picked up last week on the waivers. If they weren't, I would say Rashford is now the one to have going forward. He looks hungry to impress, but as an under-the-radar pick, I wonder if there may be some value in Ian Maatsen going forward as well. We all thought he was going to be a great pickup on draft night. He hasn't proved to be the case. He's had a difficult season. First season at Villa, he's had to wait for his chance at left-back, but he replaced Lucas Digne at half-time in the game against Ipswich, and it will be interesting to see how much game time he gets against Liverpool on Wednesday. He's played at least 45 minutes in his last 4 games now, and he is a hugely attacking fullback who can definitely contribute to Villa's offensive output if he is given the chance. Defensively, Villa are not all that, but having said that, Chelsea look utterly devoid of ideas in attack, so he may well be worth considering this week, and he'll almost certainly be free in your league. As for Chelsea, all eyes were on Christopher Nkunku ahead of that Brighton game. The question was, could he replace Nico Jackson up front? The answer was an emphatic no. He finished with an XGI of just 0.12. He was hugely unimpressive, and it will be interesting to see if Maresca changes things up for this one. He has said in the past that Nkunku is not a striker, so maybe he will look at moving Cole Palmer further forward into the number 9 role, and maybe giving an Nkunku a number 10 opportunity, which is his natural position. If he does, that may still make Nkunku a worthwhile asset in draft, certainly over the next few weeks. But if it is another underwhelming performance from him in this one, those that prioritised him in last week's waivers will be starting to panic. I do fancy Villa to win this one, so I'd be looking at any potential attacking options on the waivers from Unai Emery's men. But if you want to get ahead of the curve and future-proof your side for the next 2 game weeks, and you think that Chelsea can return to some sort of form, maybe some coverage ahead of games at home to Southampton and Leicester would be wise. Enzo, Neto, Madueke and Sancho have all been disappointing of late, but for those fixtures, they are probably worth a roll of the dice. And food for thought, Chelsea did actually beat Villa very convincingly at Stamford Bridge just before Christmas, winning 3-0. So who knows, maybe they will turn things around in Gameweek 26. On Sunday, it is Newcastle at home to Nottingham Forest. The Toon were smashed by Manchester City last time out, and Forest lost to Fulham as well, so these 2 teams looking to bounce back with a win. The Geordies are a hugely different proposition at home, and I can see them edging this one. Tino Livramento replaced Kieran Trippier at half-time at the Etihad. He had a difficult game. You would expect Livramento to start this one as a result. Sean Longstaff is another squad player who might get a start against Forest. I'm not sure I'd go for someone like Sean Longstaff, to be honest. In fact, let me clarify that. I would not go for someone like Sean Longstaff, to be honest. But before those home defeats to Fulham and Bournemouth, Newcastle had actually kept 3 clean sheets in a row at St James's Park, so Livramento may not be a bad option, and Newcastle have West Ham, Brentford and Leicester in 3 of their next 4, so there is clean sheet potential coming up, and that means if you have access to a regular Newcastle defensive asset, a player who regularly starts for them, it could be a decent waiver option. Harvey Barnes is fit again, but he's the sort of player Eddie Howe seems reluctant to use on a regular basis. Having said that, he's always good for a goal from the bench, and Callum Wilson is another one who's good for a goal from the bench. He got some more minutes in the defeat to City, so if you need a third striker, you could do a lot worse. Forest are in this rotten run of games, but Morgan Gibbs-White and Chris Wood continue to do the business. Wood now has 18 goals for the season. He will, of course, be owned in your league, but there is a chance that Morgan Gibbs-White may have been dropped ahead of these matches, and yet, in these matches, so far, he has returned 8 times in his last 11 games, including matches against Spurs, Villa and Manchester United. So maybe we shouldn't even be overly concerned about the fixtures that Forest have got. After Newcastle, they play Arsenal and Manchester City, but both of those games are at the City ground. Morato got his second start in a row for Forest against Fulham, and they have kept 3 clean sheets in their last 5 away games. So if you do fancy them to make it 4 and 6, he's another good route into their defence. And then finally, it is Manchester City against Liverpool, a huge game for both teams. City looked more solid in the win over Newcastle thanks to the addition of Nico Gonzalez in midfield. His presence in the side seems to have got the best out of Gundogan as well, who registered an assist in that victory over the Toon. His days of scoring regularly seem to be behind him, but he may be one to keep an eye on over the next few weeks just to see if Gonzalez's inclusion in the City starting 11 does afford him a bit more opportunity to attack. City also look better defensively with Gonzalez in the team. It remains to be seen if they can actually start picking up consistent clean sheets, something they haven't really been able to do for a couple of seasons now, and they're unlikely to get a clean sheet against the league leaders. But after that, they have got Brighton and Leicester at home in 2 of their next 4 games. So maybe a John Stones, a Rico Lewis, or even a Kusanov might be worth getting in earlier. Kanji is out for the long term, so Kusanov will be a regular starter if Diaz isn't fit and available. And let's face it, for the most part this season, Diaz has not been fit or available. He has been seemingly shacked up with a lovely Maya Jama. As for Liverpool, their key assets, well, they're already taken, aren't they? Sorry about that. But that is it for the Game Week 26 fixtures, and that is it for our waiver picks. There are some big options for you this week, with Merino probably top of the pile, but there's also quite a few gambles in there, with quite a few future-proof picks worth considering if you want to plan ahead. The waiver deadline for this week is on Thursday the 20th of February at 6:30pm GMT. The Game Week deadline, and therefore the free agency deadline, is 24 hours later at 6:30pm GMT on Friday the 21st of February, and the Game Week itself kicks off 90 minutes later at 8pm on Friday night with the game between Leicester City and Brentford. If you haven't already, please do subscribe to the pod, give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts, or maybe a nice review on Spotify if that's your podcast platform of choice. And while you're at it, don't forget we are on X and Instagram, where our handle is at FPL Draft Zone, and we're on Blue Sky, where our handle is at fpldraftzone.bsky.social. But that is it for this week. Good luck ahead of Game Week 26. Good luck ahead of the waivers. And of course, good luck, don't know why I'm saying it like that, in free agency, if you even need it. Until next time, it's bye for now.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.